Hi, so I want to show you how to make a touch quilt. I have found out from different sources that the smaller, the better. So I have changed my sizing to about 20-inch square. Um, so you would need nine 6.5-inch squares. Now, I have I have quilted mine. You don't have to. You don't have to add the quilting button. Um, for those who are quilters, you can use some. This is a good way to actually to use up a lot of leftover squares, as long as they're the same size, or at least as long as your row is the same size. That's really what's the most important. Now, in my case, I actually have a few different sizes. I have these ones, and I have have a couple that are bigger. So these two are going to be my middle row, and then the smaller ones will make up my two uh, the other two sides, top and bottom of the quilt. Now, because these are definitely not 6.5 inch together, like, I mean, I only need two to make my width. 19 and a half inches is what you would want, as far as, like, before you start. That way you have your quarter inch seam allowance on either side. But anyways, it's kind of touch quilts are really something that you can play around with. You can make them whatever size you want. Like I said, I mean, I have found out from people who, like, the people who are using them with clients, that the smaller the better. Um, some can be used, or I guess then too depends on how you want to make it. So and then that is the fidget items that you put on. Now, what I'm going to show you this time is mainly for children with autism. You can also make them, of course, for they go to long-term care homes for residents who have excuse me, Alzheimer's. So in their cases now, once a person gets to long-term care, I guess the thing to remember: once the person gets to long-term care, their dexterity is lessened. Their skin is thinner, so that it's much more sensitive. So try and avoid rough objects on the quilt, because they won't like that. Um, and then I usually try and go with fidget items that are kind of easier, or more geared to someone who is quite a bit older. Um, so they're not really playing with it. It's a lot more of a sensation. It's a lot more touching, is what they seem to do with them, as opposed to ones for children. They will obviously play with the items that are on the touch quilt. So, all that being said, use your imagination. Now, one other thing that I will tell you is that when you give them to an organization, the people who are working with the client, they know the person. So if you've got something on there that could maybe be chewed off, or something, or two. So I guess the other thing is that some people will swing the quilts, um, and others don't. So it just depends on the person. So when you're making it, put the things on that you want to put on, because where it goes, the people know the client. So if the person tends to be violent, they're obviously not going to give them something that's essentially going to be a weapon. So if you've got something heavier on it, they won't give it to that person. If you've got something, excuse me, if you've got a button or something, then they're not going to give it to someone who chews, so that they could possibly chew the button off. So it's not a one size fits all for these touch quilts. So really, basically, it's do what you like, do what you think that would be fun. Just kind of keep a few things in mind as to where they're going. Like I said, if it's going to long-term care, remember that these are older people, not a lot of dexterity. So smaller items to try and button or move around, like their hands are just not going to be able to do that. They really do a lot more touching. So lots of different types of material that have a nice feel to them. And then when it's for children, then of course, hey, anything goes. Like whatever kind of toys or things that you can put on it, then that's great. All right, so once you get your squares, we'll continue and sewing them together. Now, the other thing to keep in mind when you're making the touch quilt is what you're putting on and how you're going to put it on. So I have this little rubbery, fun little thing. So because I've got it with a bit of it's a necklace um, tie or whatever you want to call them, leather necklace. So I want to put that between my seams. So I've already sewed together my three. Um, in this row of three, I have a square that has some netting over it because I have some marbles and buttons in this, so it can be kind of wiggled and make some noise and fidget around. And this one has a squishy ball. And then my middle, like I said, my middle squares, my bigger ones. So that's my middle row. So you want to do, like I said, 3 rows of 3. So 3 rows of 3 to make your 9 squares. Or if you have bigger ones and you want to use 2 rows of 2, rows of 2 and rows of 3. Like, I mean, whatever you have is fine, really. It's great. Like I said, it's a great way to use up those extra squares for people who quilt. All right, so now I'm ready to sew my 3 rows together. And like I say, because I've got this to put in, I want to put it, I think I'm going to put it towards the middle. So I'm going to, when I put my rows together, I want to put this so that the string goes within the seam. And when you've got something that's going in the seam, then of course you want to go back and forth over it a couple of times to make sure it does stay in there. There's different ways to kind of, well, you have to kind of play around with, like I got to try and move some of these little stringy things that are sticking out and move them around the tie part so that it ties fairly tight. And I mean, if it comes loose and if somebody cuts it off and takes it and plays with it, I mean, like it's not the end of the world. It's yeah, I mean, it's there to be played with. So however somebody wants to play with it is fine. Once it's given, it's somebody else's. So yeah, there you go. Make it nice and tight so at least it stays. The other thing too, I mean, I'm going to wash these all before they are given out, just to make sure that what I have put on stays on, and if anything comes off, then I have a chance to fix it before I give it out, and then I know it's going to stay good. I'm going to have to try and figure out another way for this one, anyways. But yeah, so those are the other things to think about is what you're putting on and where you want it and how you want it to be on the quilt so that people can play with it. Okay, so now that you have your squares all sewed together, 3 rows of 3, 2 rows of 2, or 4, sorry, 3 rows of 2. You want 3 rows basically in the long run. You really, at the end of the day, if you're making a 20 by 20 square, however you get to that measurement is quite all right. I have my one little fidget item sewed into the seam, and now I'm going to just start putting some other items on. I have have some fuzzy material. This it's nice and soft and fuzzy, almost hair-like. Um, these little bows, which is great to put in the corners, so it makes a handle. I have these, which are going to go in a corner, and that just gives, again, just some texture, some things to play with. This is another texture items. I have quite a few things that have texture. And then I have some other toys. I have this one. It's a dinosaur. It has these little pop bubbles. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just sew on the tail and sew the tail on. And so then it's attached, kind of hanging like this. So then it's, the child who gets it can then get a hold of it and play with it. I have socks that have squishy balls in them. And I have this. This is a kind of a weight. It's got some beans in it. Make a bean bag, but just to make it a little heavy. Those are good for long-term care. Now, some people, again, long-term care, they don't like anything too heavy. So this is not very heavy. I don't know, maybe might weigh a pound if they're, probably not even a pound. It's not very heavy. So that would just go in the middle, and then it just kind of sits on their lap when they put the touch quilt on their lap, and it just kind of gives a little bit more security to a person. Same thing with children with autism. I've heard that a lot of them, they like to be covered, or they like to be covered up in a weighted blanket. So so there's, like I say, it's kind of all sorts of things that you can do with the quilts. Now, with something, excuse me, with a weight like this, what I would do, or what I'm going to do with this, is put it in between the quilt, the top of the quilt itself, and the backing. Now, for backing, and we'll talk more about this at the, towards the end, but backing, we want to use flannel material, something that kind of sticks to their clothes, so that when it's on their lap, it's not sliding off real easily. It just kind of sticks to them. So you can, a flannel is the best for that. But if you have something else that will also give that kind of a feeling or feel to it, then by all means feel free to use something like that. All right, so I have put the back on. I finished this one like a quilt, put the binding around it, but you don't have to do it that way. You can do what they call an envelope backing. Put your right sides together, sew around, leave yourself an opening, turn it inside out, and then sew all the way around just to make sure it all stays together. I've put a number of things on it. Sometimes less is more. Again, depending on where it's going, I find that like if it's going to long-term care, that sometimes they can get overwhelmed, and even children, with the autism, can get a little overwhelmed with too many items. So tried to put just enough. Again, it's no exact science. You can play around with it, and just get a feel for it. Once you have them all together, then if you at least sew like a cross in that, you can go down each row and then across this way. You just want to be able to hold the backing on. So that's that's all there is to it. And yeah, have fun with them and give them out to wherever you want to. Thanks.